everybody, and welcome to Season 5, Episode 5 of History's Greatest Idiots, the show where we look back through all of human history and give you examples of staggering human stupidity so that you can take lessons from other people's mistakes and never repeat those mistakes again. But who are we kidding? We're humans, and sometimes mistakes lead to opportunities. Maybe mostly not. Joining me as ever is my amazing co-host and dear friend Derek. Derek, how are you doing, my man? How's your week been?
It's been pretty excellent.
Awesome.
Got some rain and then some nice weather, and all around just amazing week. I think. Yeah,
that's good to hear. We're a little bit slightly later than usual, although we're never really on time.
What's on time? We
like to build suspense, a Hitchcockian thing. We were discussing money's stuff and Spotify and how confusing it all is, and a part of me wanted to swear at Spotify, but we might just be getting the wrong end of the stick. However, there is one major company that I want to swear at right now, and we were never going to get sponsorship from them anyway. GoDaddy can go fuck themselves.
Yeah, smooth.
Yeah. So I signed up because I've got this business that I've been building for a while, and it's that close to being launched, and to the point where I can start planning the marketing. That's how close it is. And I bought a domain from GoDaddy, and I was like, okay, I'm going to build it here. So I sent it to the devs, and they were like, right, okay, so we need to pay for hosting now. I was like, right, okay, I'll go and pay for hosting. $500 GoDaddy wanted to charge me to host my website for a year.
Well, was it like a really popular name, or
no? Just they're hosting, because you need certain computer power to do it. So okay. I needed 2 CPUs and 4 gigs of RAM, and they wanted to charge me $500 for that shit. And I was like, I am not a fucking mark, even though I know nothing about what you're talking about. I'm convinced that that's crazy. Anyway, I went over to some Swedish host. I bought a 2-year package for twice 4 CPUs and 8 gigs of RAM on the website, and it cost me £38 for 2 years instead of $500 for one.
It's way better. Although you just threw a bunch of letters at me, and
it's a lot.
It's the letters and magic and computer things.
Yes, the moral of the story is fuck GoDaddy. And I was thinking, before I said this, I was thinking, are we gonna cancel the opportunity for us to ever work with a company like GoDaddy? And then I was like, hang on, I would never really want to take sponsorship money to do an ad read from something I didn't believe in just to get some money. I wouldn't want, you guys who are listening, I wouldn't want to pass on some bullshit product hey, let me tell you about these rhino boner pills or whatever the fuck, I don't believe in any of that, so I only want to bring you good stuff. So
right,
that's why we're picky.
True. Well, no, see, I've thought about that too, because all of the shows that I watch seem to pitch the same stuff.
Yeah.
And I would like to believe in some of that stuff.
Sure.
But yeah, no, for our show, I don't think that I would want to just go along with it if it was a crap product or if it sucked, and be like, yeah, oh yeah, totally use GoDaddy because they're really expensive, and hooked us up, and I loved them.
They gave us a shitload of money to hawk their terrible service, so
and that's why we'll never be paid by the Russians to hawk propaganda.
That's true. And it's weird you mentioned that. So I went to another story. I went to the podcast conference in London 2 years ago, I think it was. And one of the speeches was a guy I nearly ended up working with who owns an agency. And he was he was asked the question in the Q&A, have you ever had any dodgy sponsors trying to get involved? And he was like, we had to turn down money from actual dictators that were trying to podcast wash their country's human rights record through advertising and tourism, and we just flat out said no. And then the next question was, do you know anyone else in the industry that took the money? He was like, oh yeah, but I'm not going to name any names. Oof. So if you hear any adverts for North Korea holidays,
don't believe them.
The sunny beaches of Pyongyang, just don't don't listen to that podcast because they have shilled for the wrong people. He didn't name names or mention companies or even the dictators that he was talking about, but you know who's out there and which countries you're like, hang on, this guy's a bit of a dictator. Why are they still advertising tourism? You know who's advertising out there. But anyway, interesting week for me. Like I was saying, the website's very close to being built. And I was sitting there thinking, we actually nearly did this episode on someone else than the person we're going to be covering today. I mentioned it to you. I'm not going to mention his name on air because I got in touch with the guy, and he was
cool.
Yeah, I wanted to do it because I had the sense that he would respond.
Right.
And he was like, I've had a lot of. He had a documentary made about him recently, and he was like, listen, I've had a lot of attention from that, mostly good. But I'd kind of want as I just want a quiet life now. I was like, totally get it, completely understandable. Who doesn't want that? So I was like, I will cover someone else. But if he's listening, which I hope he is, thank you so much for a really nice conversation. You're a really interesting human being. I can't even mention your name. But
I just think it's super cool that you did that.
Yeah, me too. I really do think it's yeah, I'm really pleased I did that because I would not do the same thing for the Paul brothers or anyone like that. But this guy, I felt like he would have the time and space to be able to do it. So I'm glad I did. But the person we're covering today. Oh, before we get to it. Oh, I nearly forgot. Patrons.
We're human. We make mistakes.
We're human. We make mistakes constantly in my case. So I want to give a big shout out to our paying patrons, the wonderful Jesse Christ, Kimberly Johnson, Andrew Zavara, Dilly Bob, Silent Crisis, Carrion, Susan, and Toasterzoid. Thank you all so much for being wonderful paying patrons. And if you would like to join them and sling us a little bit of money and get some stuff in return. So you get a welcome gift, you get an annual gift if you stay with us for a year, you get access to behind the scenes footage from our lives, including when we go on holidays and go to historic sites and stuff. Also, you get access to scripts. I posted episode 25 script on the Patreon the other day. That's the end of season 1. So catching up fast. And exclusive recordings as well. So if you would like access to all of that, exclusive recordings, plus getting your name shouted out at the start of the podcast, go to patreon.com/history's greatest idiots. And also you can find us on Instagram at history's greatest idiots, where I make memes that do way bigger numbers than I ever anticipated they would do. And you can find us on YouTube. They do really well. Where's the money from that? Like 350,000 hits in the last. I want money for that. Give me 60 quid. However much pathetic money it is. So yeah, and also you can find us on YouTube. If you look for History's Greatest Idiots, you'll find all of our videos on there. And just go on to Spotify because they have video podcasts right now, and that gives us a lot of money. CPM is much better with streaming videos. So thank you so much for that. So the person that we're covering today, I wanted to go a little bit further back because the person I was going to cover was like very recent. So recent, in fact, that like he's our age, just lived like a really interesting life. But I wanted to go a little bit further back. And I was trying to think of people that were, in the realm of interesting human beings that could cover and that you could definitely get something out of. And then I stumbled across a story that I've been fascinated by at various points in the last 10 years. It only seems to have gathered steam in the last 10 years. And that's the story of Adrian Carton De Wiart, the unkillable soldier. So,
okay. Yeah.
And you might think, oh, well, a name like that, that's like hyperbole. No, this motherfucker was literally unkillable.
So like a cyborg?
Almost. I mean, by the end, he basically was. So, yeah, sure. You are going to... This dude... He might be the craziest person we've ever covered in this podcast. And we covered Alex Jones. So, I am talking like, I have never seen someone with as much fatalism in history than this guy. This guy had a death wish. Legit. And he nearly got there several times, but somehow he was like, oh, damn, I've still got parts of me attached. So... And get ready for a bunch of posh English voices. And also a bunch of impronounceable names because he's like descended from Belgian royalty. and married into a bunch of other royalty. So
okay,
get yourself ready for that. Sir Adrian Paul Ghislaine Carton De Wiart was born into an aristocratic family in Brussels on the 5th of May, 1880. The eldest son of Leon Constant Ghislaine Carton De Wiart, 1854 to 1915, who was a half British, half Belgian lawyer and magistrate, and Ernestine Wenzig, who died at 26. His mum died at a very young age. Although at the time he was widely believed to be an illegitimate son of King Leopold II of Belgium.
Oh, so he's a bastard king's son.
Might be, actually. So he's either rich or she's like super rich.
Okay,
like that. That's what we're going for here. He's either like aristocratic or actual nobility. So
but if you're the illegitimate child of the king, like, because at that point, is he like his best friend's buddy's kid then?
Yeah, like that sort of thing.
Hey, you knocked up my wife, dude.
Thank you, king. I guess I can't say anything because you'll just have me executed.
Yeah, I guess the king, was that back when the king was able to just do? No, that's 1800s. I'm thinking medieval times. Boy, am I terrible at history. Why am I on this show?
So also that whole thing about prima nocta, that never happened. That was not a thing. That's actually made up. And
you mean Mel Gibson just makes shit up?
Yeah, and also please believe in gravity, unlike him. But no, the prima nocta was never really a thing, but kings just like fucking whoever they wanted. Yeah, that was definitely a thing.
Oh yeah,
and like you didn't have to have like, oh, there's a rule in this land where I can have sex with any woman on the first night of her wedding. No, they would just fuck whoever they wanted, whenever they wanted. And
I just figured they made up whatever rules they wanted, whenever they wanted.
Exactly, yeah. So prima nocta wasn't a thing, but doing whatever the fuck they wanted definitely was. So that's what we're dealing with here. However, on a side note about King Leopold, he's directly responsible for the exploitation, mutilation, and genocide of up to 15 million Congolese nationals, as he amassed a huge personal fortune by exploiting the vast natural resources of the Congo. That's why Belgium's road network is entirely illuminated. So you can go onto any like dirt road, any back road, any side alley, any major motorway, completely illuminated all the way through. And that's that exceptionally well illuminated road network is built using a foundation of blood. So yeah,
all right,
yeah, not a nice guy, and may have porked this dude's wife. So
God, he's busy.
Yeah. Kind of an arsehole. Not much time to do kinging when you're kind of being that evil. So Adrian Carton De Wiart, he spent his early days in Belgium and in England, kind of between the two. The loss of his mother when he was just 6 years old prompted his father to move the family to Cairo, so his father could practice at Egypt's mixed courts. Okay. So yeah, mixed courts led to radical reform in Egypt's chaotic 19th century legal system. Basically, consular courts, so all these different people who had influence, competed with government tribunals and religious courts for jurisdiction. So it's just a bunch of cliques, basically, in one place. And it's like a cutthroat environment. And the ruler goes, I like you at the moment. And they go off and they get jurisdiction over this thing. So it's kind of a bit like companies bidding for government contracts now, essentially.
Okay.
Only like the 19th century version of that, and in Egypt, and chaos. So yeah, intrigue, stabbing, poisonings, shit like that. And he was like, oh, I'm going to take my son there. No wonder this guy had a death wish, because he was surrounded by that from the age of 6 and he'd lost his mum. So
yeah, that's wild.
It's not a great start, really, for someone who goes on to be... It's so hard to know. I think he was probably a psychopath, this guy. You'll see why.
That's what he grew up in?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. He grew up rich. He grew up surrounded and violence and intrigue and backstabbing and poisoning and competition. So he was just like ready for the swirling vortex of war, and he craved that shit like a pig craves shit, basically. So this led early biographers to assume that his mother had died in 1886. However, in later research, it was established that his parents had in fact divorced in that year, and that his mother remarried, but then died. So it was like a double whammy. So divorce, remarried, died.
Okay.
Effectively. So that's a lot for a 6-year-old to take in, especially in the 19th century when you're living in Cairo and you're rich and nothing makes sense really. So yeah.
No kidding.
In his position as a lawyer, a magistrate, and a director of the Cairo Electric Railways and Heliopolis Oasis Company, his father was well connected in Egyptian government circles. While there, young Adrian learned to speak Arabic, which is super useful for him in the future. Carton De Wiart was Roman Catholic. In 1891, his English stepmother sent him to a boarding school in England, the Roman Catholic Oratory School, founded by John Henry Newman, who wrote a bunch of hymns and shit. From there, he went to Balliol College in Oxford, which is a very famous college in Oxford University. It's one of the older colleges in the university itself, and Oxford University has been around for 1,000 years.
Okay, so, what for slower people like myself?
Sure, yeah.
A college at a university.
Yeah, so
what's that?
Yeah, so these older British universities, Oxford, Cambridge, St Andrews, a few others as well, they were basically the entire town. They were huge, sprawling campuses, a lot like American campuses now, only 1,800 years ago, or 1,000 to 800 years ago. So really unique in the world of education. There weren't too many things in the Western world in the Middle Ages that had this kind of size of institution. So it was really difficult for one university to run itself as like a single entity, because there was no administration. This is just before electronics. You can't keep track of anything. So what would happen was Oxford University was kind of like a loose conglomerate of little colleges. So Balliol College might specialize in like law or something, and this college might kind of work towards accountancy, and there's like King's College and all these different, Christchurch and all these different colleges that are all part of Oxford University, but they all each individual college specializes in certain things. And usually, really unique thing in Oxford University, the college itself will also house the students on the same site as they're having classes and they're having their dinners, and so it within the same building, effectively. Big building by the time, but still all housed in the same thing. And basically Oxford is just an engine for academic achievement, and the same thing with Cambridge as well. So that's why you get colleges with inside a university basically it's like a department, effectively.
Gotcha. Yeah,
like School of Law, School of Art, School of Design, School of Math, School of basically that, only they were called colleges. So it just made it easier to keep track. Yeah, really cool system. If anyone ever comes to the UK on holiday, and I know that obviously everyone wants to go to London and they want to see all of the shit in London, go to Oxford and Cambridge. It's a very different pace of life, because it's still academic, but people are a lot more laid back. There's a lot of things to see. The food is fucking amazing. I know British food generally isn't, but it actually is in these places. And it's just full of history and a really cool environment, and just it's a bit more laid back because everyone's academic and smoking weed on the lawns and shit. So
there you go.
There you go. There's
my
sold
kind
for
of
a bunch of people. Yeah. So he goes off to Balliol College in Oxford, but he left around 1899 at the age of 19, just before or during the Second Boer War, which was a war in South Africa between the Boers, who were the people who lived there, and the English Empire. Not dissimilar to the American Civil War in a sense. That they're trying to go for jurisdiction over these, like a specific part of the country, effectively. And he wanted a piece of that, the Second Boer War, so he decided to join the British Army. He falsified his name and age, signing up as Trooper Carton, which sounds like a rap album.
It's kind of a cool name.
It is.
Yeah.
Like, keep that going. It's certainly easier than your actual name. And he claimed to be 25 years old when his actual age was 19 or 20. And I think enlistment age at this point was like 21 or something. So
did the smart thing, shoot a little high, so it's not like I'm the exact age.
I'm 21 and a half. Like, no, you're not. Sadly, faking your age to get into the army was like a massive trend at the time, and that continued for decades afterwards until the romance of being a warrior and dying in battle and giving your life for king and country that gave way to the harsh realities of modern warfare, because media became a thing and poetry became a thing, and people started writing poetry from the front line. The photographers were present during like the Boer War and the First World War, and all of a sudden these horrific pictures are making their way back home, and people are like, I don't want to fucking go there. That looks like hell. So
yeah,
especially like you look at the pictures of the front line in World War One, like Flanders Field or the Somme, it literally looks like hell. I can't imagine anything. Every stereotypical movie you've ever seen of a World War One film where like there's barbed wire and men are just like wrapped in it, the dead corpses, and there's ditches and bombed out shells and there's bodies everywhere. Like, that's not inaccurate. That's exactly as bad as it was. They weren't going to throw up the chance to sign this guy up though, and they also weren't going to question his age because he was already 6'3", and broad-shouldered, like just a big motherfucker. Because at this point in time, people weren't generally over 5'8", especially in the UK, because he's rich, so he's got access to a good diet. But in the 19th century in Dickensian England, no one's getting anything more than like a boiled potato or maybe an onion if they're lucky. You know, no one's getting protein. Most people are dying of cholera. You know, like it's really bad. So this 6'3" literal giant tells you that he's 20 years old or 25 years old. You're not going to argue with him. He also had a full mustache by this point, which, you're not going to argue with someone who's got a full mustache. And he's taller than 95% of the people on the planet at the time. So, of course.
Here's your weapon. Go.
Yeah, just kill. And he did. Arriving in South Africa, De Wiart got a first glimpse of what modern war was like. A group of entrenched enemies behind a fence of barbed wire proved to be almost impossible to dislodge. De Wiart volunteered to dash forward straight towards them to remove said wire, and his more level-headed colonel denied the request, called him a fool, and most likely saved his life. This enormous dude was like, I'll just run over there and pull down the wire. And like, what is wrong with you? No, stop being stupid. Broodingly, De Wiart conceded war was still eluding me, and my vivid imaginings of charging Boers single-handedly and dying gloriously with a couple of posthumous Victoria Crosses were becoming a little hazy. He's a fucking lunatic.
Yeah.
I want to just charge people. Like, what?
Does he think he's going to get to be around for those post?
I don't think he does. He wants to die. He used the word posthumous.
Yeah, does he think he gets to be around for those awards?
No.
Those posthumous awards?
He was like, my family will be proud. But fuck me, they weren't, actually.
He'll be kind of bummed, probably.
Yeah. Like, oh, he lied and he went away to war and he didn't tell us, and now he's got a couple of Victoria Crosses. Okay. Oh, by the way, I should go on about this. Victoria Cross is like the highest honor in the British military. It's like the Purple Heart, effectively. Is that the highest honor in the US military?
Medal of Honor.
Medal of Honor. There you go. Yeah, it's Purple like the Medal of Honor.
You get if you're wounded in battle.
He gets a bunch of these.
Okay.
And not just like for being. I think to get a Victorian Cross, it's like you have to be wounded, but it has to be like directly as a result of like saving someone or something, or doing like an incredibly heroic thing. So that's like, and he does a bunch of that. His wish to die in battle was nearly answered when he received a bad stomach wound and a bullet straight through his groin. So he's shot in the stomach, and then immediately a bullet passes right through his groin.
That sucks.
when recklessly fighting a group of Boer soldiers well within firing range of their rifles. And yeah, when the medics found De Wiart, his only response was, "These Boers are fucking good shots." Yeah.
Obviously not.
Well, apparently not. There's a 6'3" guy charging them, and they only managed to hit him in the balls and stomach. But
yeah, maybe they were trying.
Maybe they were. They were going, let's get this guy's balls. But yeah, he would survive. But his identity and age were revealed, and he was immediately sent back to England. Although his peers at Oxford celebrated him as something of a hero, Carton thought that that it was not possible for anyone to have had a duller dose of war and to have returned bereft of glory. So, I got shot. It was boring. It's such a weird response.
That's okay. Yeah.
His father was furious when he learned that his son had abandoned his studies and fucked off to war, but allowed him to remain in the army because ultimately, what are you going to do? Your giant child wants to fight. Are you going to get in his way? Like,
how is he staying in the army? He lied and got shot in the dick.
They don't care. They do not care. This is like, oh, but you got wounded in action. You're brave. Look, the gallantry. You faked your age and your name, and you fought a bunch of. Oh, so brave.
Okay.
None of that like lying or deception. They're like, oh, you wanted to do it for king country, didn't you? You're such a good empirical son. Yes, wonderful. Anyway, after another brief period at Oxford that bored him out of his fucking skull, he was given a commission in the 2nd Imperial Light Horse Troop, or something. It just says Light Horse. He saw action in South Africa again, where he was wounded. This time in the chest. He got shot in the chest. This time.
Yeah, those are better shots.
These guys are getting closer. And they only continue to get closer as well. Oof. And on the 14th of September, 1901, was given a regular commission as a 2nd lieutenant in the 4th Dragoon Guards. Carton De Wiart was transferred to India in 1902. He basically had been shot enough times where they were like, just go somewhere else for a while, please. You heal up. We'll send you to India. Just try not to die of complications from Crohn's disease. He basically spent his time in India playing a bunch of sports. He was especially good at shooting. Like he loved hunting, and a sport called pig sticking, which is exactly as horrible and dangerous as it sounds. He basically fought pigs to the death with spears.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So you Google pig sticking as a sport, one of the first things that comes up is like a medieval picture of just men stabbing pigs with spears. And I'm like, oh, right. So it is exactly what it sounds like. It's
on
not
horses.
On horses sometimes as well. So it's basically just a hunt. But I was like, oh, is this going to be some like elaborate knockoff of like cricket or like the evolution of where rugby came from? No, it's just men just stabbing pigs, basically. It's exactly as weird and crazy as it sounds, especially as someone who had just participated in the Boer War. You'd think you'd want to stay away from something that is a bore. And that's a terrible joke. So we've got a picture here on the live stream. Yeah, there you go. Pig sticking. It's just literally sticking. Yeah, and also it seems to be a lady that's doing it. Just fucking sticking a spear right through the mouth of a pig. That is a weird looking pig, too.
Yeah, it's got like a mohawk.
Yeah, it does. And yeah, that doesn't look like any pig I've ever seen. Carton De Wiart's serious wound in the Boer War instilled in him a strong desire for physical fitness. He ran, jogged, walked, and played sports on a regular basis. In male company, he was a delightful character and must hold the world record for bad language, one of his contemporaries said. Delightful fucker that he was. So after his regiment was transferred to South Africa again, he was promoted to lieutenant on the 16th of July, 1904, and appointed an aide-de-camp to the Commander-in-Chief, Lieutenant General Sir Henry Hildyard, the following July. So he's like an understudy for the guy who's in charge, because they're like, this crazy bastard's quite useful. Okay. He describes this period lasting up to 1914 as his heyday, which is the title of Chapter 3 of his autobiography. which you can. It's like a jolly good trip around murder. Is basically his biography. It's really funny.
Chapter 3, My Heyday, Killing Time.
Heyday. So many kills. His light duties as aide-de-camp gave him time for polo, another of his interests, another posh person sport. By 1907, although by then having served in the British Army for 8 years, he had remained a Belgian subject. So on the September the 13th of that year, he took the oath of allegiance to Edward VII and was formally naturalized as a British subject. Do we want this rich, unkillable, foul-mouthed killing machine to be part of our country officially? You bet your ass we do. Like,
well, I mean, anytime you have an unkillable person that wants to fight for you, you got to sign them up.
Yeah, or build a series of superhero teams around them. Like, that's kind of a no-brainer, really, because that's what this guy is becoming at this point. Now, I've struggled with names before this moment, and I'm really going to fucking struggle now. In 1908, he married. I'm just going to take a drink before I do this, because there's a lot of names.
All right. It's better you than me doing these names.
Some of them are quite funny, though. Okay. He married in 1908 Countess Friedrich Maria Caroline Henriette Rosa Sabine Franziska Fugger von Babenhausen. Von Babenhausen.
All right.
That's a cool name. Also, sorry, I said Fugger, it's Fugger. Who died in 1949 in Vienna. She was the eldest daughter of Karl, the fifth Prince Fugger, the fifth Prince Fugger von Babenhausen, and Princess, this is the one, Eleonora zu Hohenzollern-Barenstein und Jagdsberg of Klagenfurt, Austria. Fuck.
Yeah.
The Berenstein
Zoolander from Klagenstein.
It's that episode of 30 Rock again where Paul Rubens plays a fucking European nobleman. It's like his chin's hanging on by dear life. Literal Austrian royalty he married into, because he's basically Belgian royalty at this point. However, I should point out that those crazy names that I just mentioned, they're all descended from the much easier to remember and much funnier to pronounce name of the House of Fugger. Fuggers. The really interesting thing about this, I had no idea about this, and I was big up on my Renaissance history, and I had no idea about any of this happening. The Fuggers replaced the Medici family as the main political banking family of Europe after those idiots managed to get themselves wiped out. So the Fuggers were the new people, you know, all this stuff about the Rothschilds and stuff. No, it was the Fuggers. Those Fuggers
The Fuggers are in charge.
The Fuggers are in charge.
I always knew those Fuggers were in charge.
Yeah, it's always those Fuggers, isn't it? You can never trust a Fugger. Adrian was well connected in European circles, his two closest cousins being Count Henry Carton De Wiart, the Prime Minister of Belgium from 1920 to 1921, lasted longer than Theresa May, and Baron Edmund Carton De Wiart, political secretary to the King of Belgium and director of La Société Générale de Belgique, which is like the Bank of England or the US Federal Reserve, only for Belgian people.
Okay.
Basically. So while on leave, he traveled extensively throughout Europe because of his connections, but mainly, interestingly, not relying on his military record of just basically being shot all the time. He used his aristocratic Catholic connections to go hunting and shoot at country estates in Bohemia, Austria, Hungary, and Bavaria. He's basically just walking up to all of these like famous country estates, going, "Hello, I'm a famous Catholic person. Praise Jesus. Can I go and shoot something now?"
Can you do that? Is that how that works?
Apparently you can, and this fucking dude did. I mean, who's going to argue with him? He's a fucking giant compared to everyone else, and he's like full of bullet holes at this point. Yeah, please just go far away from the house and shoot something. Will you leave us alone after that? Yes. Okay, go back to living under a bridge or whatever. So Following his return to England, he was promoted to the rank of captain on the 26th of February 1910. The Duke of Beaufort was the honorary colonel of the Royal Gloucestershire Hussars. Hussars. And from Hussiers. And from the 1st of January 1912 until his departure for Somaliland in 1914, Carton De Wiart served as the regiment's adjutant. Don't know what that is. Military things. I'm assuming it's an important role anyway. When the First World War broke out, Carton De Wiart was on a boat en route to British Somaliland, where a low-level war was underway between the followers of the dervish leader Mohammed bin Abdullah, who was nicknamed the Mad Mullah by the British. And Carton De Wiart said in his diary, "It seems extraordinary to think of my utter ignorance of world affairs, but at that, even then, pregnant moment, I fondly imagined I should be one of the few people to see a shot fired in anger, and I could hardly believe my ears when at Brindisi or Malta we heard that Germany and Russia were at war, and my cup of misery overflowed when at arrival at Aden I learned that England had also declared war on Germany. Hurrah, I can kill people again." Which translated is posh talk for I'm going to go and shoot every fucking person I see. He was just a pig in shit again, basically.
I mean, you do what you love.
Everyone has their hobby. And also, we're not here to kink shame. So if you want to shoot people, that's your thing, and you're a giant, almost unmissable target, you do you.
Sign up for your most important country's position and go do it to your heart's content.
Just enjoy life. If that's chasing towards people when they're shooting at you, then do you, I guess. In November, goodness. Yeah. You found the picture of him. So this is in the Second World War. You'll notice immediately he looks like every stereotype of like the grizzled war veteran that he is. So
yeah, some of these other ones, I'll bring them up later. But
so I just love the picture of Carton De Wiart. When you Google Adrian Carton De Wiart or the Unkillable Soldier, you look at him and you go, yeah, he looks fucking unkillable. Because he's usually wearing an eye patch and he's got a fucking giant mustache. And also you can't see off screen, but there's some other shit coming. And it's gross. So Carton De Wiart had been seconded to the Somaliland Camel Corps, of all people. In November 1914, by a well-fortified blockhouse, De Wiart and the Somalis advanced as far as they could, close enough to be able to touch the dervishes' rifles in the loopholes with his walking stick. He loved this fucking walking stick. It was, a lot of the time, it was his only weapon. So he would pull out and he'd have a sword inside it, but most of the time it was just a stick. Anyway, trying to get another glimpse of the defenses because, they're 4 feet away. You want to make sure. De Wiart stuck his head over the barricade and was shot in the left eye.
Oh!
Yeah.
Well, that's where the patch comes from.
Yeah, there you go. That's where the fucking terrifying eye patch comes from. And apparently that didn't lead to him getting down. He just apparently went, oh, blast, I've been shot in my left eye. A few minutes later, another bullet exploded, hitting him in the same eye. It just like fucking nudged the first bullet further deep in there.
Ouch.
Although he was basically blind with pain at this point and his eye was pissing blood everywhere, he refused surgery, knowing that it was his one chance to get back to Europe. And he said, I or no I, I'm getting on that fucking boat and I'm getting treatment back in England. Because he didn't want to get treated out in the field. He was like, you'll kill me otherwise.
Yeah, I would think.
Yeah, I mean, this is very soon after Florence Nightingale kind of helps develop field treatment for soldiers and antiseptics and proper conditions. So, yeah, he was probably right to get on it. Like, yeah, okay, I'm just gonna get on this boat. Yeah, fuck the soldier, fuck the medics. I'm just gonna go back to England. So his plan worked. He was sent back to England, and on the 3rd of January 1915, his eye was removed. He was... Go on, what were you going to say?
I just have a thing with eyes.
Yeah. It's over. The eye thing is over. However, it's going to get worse. I should have put a thing out. If you are disturbed by things like Game of Thrones or the recent Deadpool film, or with like limbs being chopped off and shit, like seriously, this is an episode that might disturb you because it's only going to get more gross from here. So he's sent back to England. He was awarded the Distinguished Service Order, DSO, on the 15th of May 1915 for basically being shot in the eye and continuing to swear and freak everyone out around him because he's crazy. So just give him a medal, shut him up, Jesus. De Wiart's request to fight in on the front line of Flanders, he was like, nah, I got shot in the eye. I want to go to the front line, not Somaliland. And they're like, you've just lost an eye, dude. Retire.
Yeah, I've still got some things.
I've still got various limbs left. But he was constantly pestering his superiors to be sent to the actual front line of World War One, which, if you've ever seen pictures, as we mentioned before, is a fucking horrifying hellscape. And he wanted to be sent there. And his request was easily granted because Flanders was in dire need of what they call experienced officers at that point, but what they actually mean is anyone, because over 150,000 soldiers died in Flanders alone during the First World War. To put it into perspective, the front line in Flanders at Flanders Field is about the same size as Birmingham, Alabama. The city of Birmingham, Alabama, and 150,000 people died there in 4 years. That's an average of 102 people a day, and he wanted to go there. Also, around about this time, he's just been shot in the eye. The machine gun is now being used very regularly, and you've got a picture of Flanders Field.
Yeah, just think of how many times he could have got him in the eye with the machine gun.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, these are actual pictures from the front line. I want to point out, because my mother's actually been to Flanders. We lost family members in the First World War, like documented and stuff. So she went out there to see the graves. Flanders is now back to what it was before the war, kind of just beautiful poppy fields and trees and all of this. And you look at it there, and there is no vegetation. It is just mud and humans lugging weapons everywhere. Horrifying scenes from that war. The only problem, of course, with him being sent to the front line, there's the trenches as well. Horrible conditions for these poor men because they're constantly being rained on as well. The problem, of course, was his wound. British High Command did not wish the Germans to think that they were reduced to sending out one-eyed officers, no matter how fucking gigantic they were. And he basically said, I will go back. If you want, I'll wear a glass eye. And they were like, yeah, we like that. Yeah, just fake having a bit like Michael Bisping in the UFC, who fought with a glass eye for like the last 2 fights of his career. He lied about having 2 working eyes in his last few fights. He had a glass eye in.
How do you pass the medical?
I guess they don't check for eyes. But he hit it really, really well, apparently. Anyway, so he agrees to wear this glass eye. He got his papers signed by the higher-ups, got in a taxi, and then immediately tossed the startlingly, excessively uncomfortable glass eye out of the fucking window of the taxi and replaced it with a black eye patch, which became his his signature look. So,
yeah. And boy.
Yeah. It's distinctive.
It fits.
Yeah. He looks terrifying. And this is a man who's already been shot 5 times. Now he has no depth perception. So that's really going to help. Also, his only weapon seems to be this fucking walking stick that he takes everywhere. Anyway, De Wiart found that fighting in Somaliland was nothing compared to this version of the war. Curious more than anything, De Wiart made his way to the front line as the shelling increased. I was standing next to my second in command, wondering what to do, when he said, I wish you duck when those shells come. I was on the point of telling him that I was a fatalist and believed in the appointed hour when we heard another shell coming, and he ducked. The shell burst quite near us, and I was thrown some distance. I picked myself up and started to move my men when I noticed a hand on the ground. The hand was encased in a special kind of leather glove. When I recognized it immediately, it was worn as by my second in command. His body was nearly 40 yards away. So there you are. You'll notice that in that picture, if you're watching this, he doesn't seem to have a left hand. Now he's
missing
something missing from this picture. And he's already had a warning shot. He's somehow survived being blown up by a shell, and it's killed his second in command who lost his hand. That should have been enough and a bit of a foreshadowing moment, but he was just, no, forget it. De Wiart continued along the bombed-out Menin road, and when they passed some dead Germans, he thought something was off. There had been no reports of the enemy breaking through in the region, but before he could finish the thought, the silence was broken by a torrent of German machine gun fire. De Wiart found himself flat on the ground in a pool of his own blood. His hand was a damaged, gory mess, barely still attached to his arm. He got up and ran like a crazy person through the storm of bullets back to the front line, basically. This is a line from his diary. I hope he was ambidextrous, otherwise the handwriting would have been terrible.
God.
That's gallows humor. My hand was a ghastly sight. 2 of the fingers hanging by a bit of skin. All the palm was shot away, and most of the wrist. For the first time, and certainly the last, I'd been wearing a wristwatch, and it had been blown into the remains of my wrist. Oh my fucking God. That's so bad. I asked the doctor to take my fingers off. He refused. So I pulled them off myself and felt absolutely no pain in doing so. Can you take these swearing fingers off, please? Holy shit. He pulled his own fingers off. This guy's basically Deadpool.
I liked it better when he found his second in command's hand. It came off clean. I thought for sure
that was it. You thought that was it? No, he was like, it's just like a fucking, just a meat, just dribbling, dripping, and he's like, fuck it, pulled off 2 fingers.
I thought for sure that was foreshadowing of like, you're next, fucker, haha.
Yeah, his was worse, to be honest, although he was still alive at this point. Anyway, it keeps going. By December 1915, De Wiart was sick of the surgeons trying to save his hand. They'd been through like 3 operations. Nothing was working. So when they weren't looking, he got up out of his bed and cut his own hand off.
This guy is
he's a
something
psychopath.
Else, man.
He is fucking insane. I don't think I've ever heard of anything quite as crazy as that, but he wanted to just get on with it. Stop fucking around, wasting my time.
Think how short the Saw movie would have been if he was in there.
Can you imagine? Fucking Jigsaw. If you want to escape, like, oh, way ahead of you. Like, do you want the fingers?
No, stop. You don't have to. What are you doing?
Why are you solving it so quickly? We're trying to string this out for 90 minutes. After his health returned, apparently, after chopping his own fucking hand off. He wanted back in the war. With one eye and one hand, he attached himself to the infantry, I'm assuming with the other hand. Fighting in the trenches made De Wiart realize just how important the role model of the well-behaved and disciplined officer truly was. His own deeds could make or break morale within a regiment, even if it meant exposing himself, to great danger. An invisible commander was no source of inspiration. I mean, it's true, the person that leads from the front is always going to earn respect. But usually when the person leading you has all of their limbs and they haven't been blown off and shit like that, it's a bit more encouraging than this crazy man with one eye missing and one hand missing now.
Yeah, because I'd be like, I don't know, man. Fucking, you seem to make bad decisions. Look at how many things you're missing.
Yeah. Do you think he was like so big that they were just all lining up and hiding behind him, and that's why they liked him so much? Just a giant fucking tight conga line just behind this enormous human being. So at the same time, however, it made De Wiart a pitiless and unforgiving man who value duty over personal fears. I was looking round our trenches when I saw a man who was certainly not going forwards. I asked him the reason for his dawdling, and he replied that he had been wounded 3 or 4 times already and simply couldn't face it. I mean, understandably, right?
So I waved my nub at him and I pointed at my patch.
I've had it worse. That's literally what he did. I told him I had been hit. This is how he wrote it. I told him I had been hit oftener than he had, but still had to face it. And to give a little point to my argument, I gave him a push in the right direction, and he went over. He threw him over the wall. Man, I never carried a revolver, being afraid that if I lost my temper, I might use it on my own people. So my only weapon was a walking stick. That's why he's got the walking stick. He might just shoot anyone.
He should have been a Russian.
He could have been American.
Like, I meant like during that time.
Yeah,
that's what they did. Yeah,
because like if people retreated, they would get executed on the spot by their superiors or anyone with a gun, actually. And this guy's just like, if they cry a little bit, I'm going to blow their fucking brains out. That's how crazy this guy is. Man,
I feel like that's a little bit excessive.
I feel like maybe he's not the kind of person you want leading. Like maybe a smidge of empathy. Maybe just a soupçon of empathy, just a little shot glass full might have come in handy. Like, listen, I realize you're afraid, but if you try and retreat, you'll be done for desertion and you'll be hung anyway. Hanged. I mean,
if you're gonna war.
You got a war, son. Otherwise, the people that you're supposed to, supposedly like you, they're going to hang you anyway. So you might as well go over. Get behind me. I'm a big target. I keep getting hit. Just stay behind me. But no, he was like, fucking get over there. So.
And what happened to that guy?
Oh, yeah, he died. As De Wiart described it, dead everywhere. Sorry, I've skipped forward a bit. In time for... Yeah.
Sorry about that.
No, that's me. We got sidetracked. It's totally fine. In time for the Battle of Somme, which is like 250,000 people died in like 3 days at the Somme. De Wiart was to attack Le Boisselle, one of the strongest German positions. On the morning of July 3rd, 1916, he led his men through to the position. As De Wiart described it, dead everywhere, not a house standing, flattened as if the very soul had been blasted out of the earth and turned into a void. Very poetic there from this psychopathic lunatic. By nightfall, it didn't go so well for him. By nightfall, nearly all of De Wiart's accompanying officers were either dead or wounded, and he found himself in a most unhealthy spot and a magnet for shells of every size. So he's just like fucking... like, hello, boys, over here. Just shoot at me, please. He was suddenly knocked to the ground. Bleeding profusely, he checked his body and found the whole back of his head had been blown off by a machine gun bullet.
Oh, that's what that was.
Yes. So you saw a picture, didn't you, of like, the angle that no photographer's supposed to capture.
Yeah.
He had the back of his head blown off. Luckily,
I gotta find it again. Dang it.
That's okay. I love that the response to that is, luckily it missed all the vital parts. So his brain, basically, yeah, it missed his brain. Got his skull and his skin and his hair, but not his brain. That was still exposed to the elements. But once more, he was brought to the dressing station. Oh, okay, all right, I'll go and get my fucking head reattached. It's so attached. Yeah, like at this point he might as well just have like china, like fine china put over the back of his head, because it's going to get blown off again at some point. After 3 weeks in the hospital and receiving the Victoria Cross for his actions, basically everyone else died but you lived, is a really important medal. He was once again back on the front line. He had his fucking head blown off and he's back on the front line 3 weeks later.
Good grief.
Yeah.
Wow.
Crazy.
Man.
Yeah. During the battles of Arras and Passchendaele, which is actually that's the battle where my relatives died, also, they forged their age to get into the army. They were 15, and they told the world they were 18 because at this point the recruitment requirements had been dropped way down. So they both died at Passchendaele, or Ypres, I think it was. Anyway, in 1917, De Wiart could see how the British Army had progressed by the time he got back. Now it was their artillery that dominated the battlefield, and shells were available in abundance, but that didn't mean they were out of danger. So basically, because the First World War was a war of attrition. You know, the front line would shift backwards and forwards and stuff, and hundreds of thousands of people died. So basically, the British came up with this idea where they were like, what if we manufacture shitloads of shells, like millions of giant shells, and we basically bomb the shit out of an entire area for 12 hours, and then our guys just walk forwards? And they were like, oh yeah, that could work. Why didn't we do that 4 years ago? And basically that's what they did. So the soldiers would like advance like 200 yards behind where the shells were landing in like a constant wall, and like everything would be destroyed in front of them. And that's how they did it. They just slowly advanced that way. So
scorched earth.
Exactly. Like you're doing a scorched earth advancement instead of a retreat. And it's very clever, but it's not that clever that you couldn't have fucking thought of it at the start of the war. You know? So basically, once more, De Wiart found himself caught in a German barrage, his clothes blown into his hip by an exploding shell. The wound went septic almost immediately, yet De Wiart pulled through. He was not going to be defeated by a minor thing such as sepsis, you know, or gross infections, basically. By now, not only his doctors, but also the general staff urged him not to return to the front lines. Only De Wiart's personal appeal to General Hubert Goff got him back to the front line, just in time for the German spring offensive of 1918. The Kaiserschlacht badly mauled the British, but the front line held. Thanks to De Wiart's magnetic personality, he found himself once more in the middle of heavy fighting, with a large piece of shrapnel buried itself in his already injured hip, very nearly costing him his leg.
Uh-oh. I was going to say magnetic.
I mean, literally, at this point, he is basically a giant human magnet for fucking bullets.
Right.
But no, returning to hospital for surgery, De Wiart found out that his fame as the unkillable soldier had actually spread. I was lying on a stretcher, feeling extremely bad-tempered and disgruntled with my latest brief stay in France. I mean, okay, Paris syndrome, whatever. When a well-meaning clergyman came up to me, seeing that the disgruntled expression on my face and my one eye, he told me to cheer up, as it might have been much worse. He said he had such a cheerful fellow through his hands a few months earlier. A man had lost both his eye and an arm. I asked the man's name, and he said General Carton De Wiart, and seemed quite hurt when I lost interest in the conversation. Like, you're lying about me, you motherfucker. I was never cheerful. I'm always in a bad mood.
Somebody's telling him stories about himself.
Yeah, and they're lies. So he's like, dude, look, stump. You know, like, Jesus Christ. But it kind of gets a bit more interesting. Between 1916 and 1918, Carton De Wiart was promoted 7 times and was awarded the Belgian Croix de Guerre in March 1918, and was appointed a Companion of the Order of St. Michael and St. George in the King's Birthday Honours List in June. So the King was like, yeah, there's this crazy guy in the front line. I'm going to give him a special mention in the paper. Once more, De Wiart returned to the war in October, but this was only to witness its conclusion. The armistice brought a momentary thrill of victory, which soon faded. I think only the civilians get any real joy out of the war. Well, yeah, because they're the ones that had to fucking suffer through it. And then the release from the strain of eternal waiting. Frankly, I enjoyed the war, said the man who'd lost an eye, an arm, got shot in the hip, fucking half of his head blown off. So yeah,
watched his second in command get blown up right next to him.
Yeah, with his beautiful leather glove somehow
back of his head blown off by a machine gun.
Yeah, and he's been in 2 wars at this point. So,
but they were always boring because he kept getting shot.
I know. He's like, look, just let me bleed. please. Also, I forgot to mention he'd lost a bit of his ear as well at this point, so he'd also like messed up his ear. So at the end of the war, Carton De Wiart was sent to Poland as second in command of the British Poland military mission under General Louis Botha. Poland desperately needed support as it was engaged with the Bolshevik Russians. It was engaged with Bolshevik Russia in the Polish-Soviet War, the Ukrainians in the Polish-Ukrainian War, the Lithuanians in the Polish-Lithuanian War, and the Czechs in the Czech-Polish border conflicts. That's 4 wars they're fighting at the same time. Poland never has it easy, to be honest. Jesus. One of his tasks soon after Carton De Wiart's arrival was to attempt to make peace between the Poles and the Ukrainians. The peace talks were unsuccessful because he basically didn't know how to negotiate with anything other than his fists. So,
can you use the walking stick? And he only had
fucking get the fuck out of Poland. Basically was his point of negotiation. From there, he went on to Paris to report to British Prime Minister David Lloyd George and to General Sir Henry Wilson regarding the Polish situation. Lloyd George was not sympathetic to Poland, and much to Carton De Wiart's annoyance, Britain sent next to no military supplies. Pissed off at his country for abandoning its duty, he went back to Poland and took part in many more frontline adventures that he was not ordered to be a part of. So he's literally volunteering for missions that are likely to get him killed at this point. This time,
he's just mad that he's missing an arm and an eye, and he's like, "Okay, I'm ready.
I'll take fucking anyone out. Yeah." Give me more stuff. I want to fight more. And they wouldn't give it to him. This time in the Bolshevik zone, where the situation was grave and Warsaw, the capital, was threatened. During this time, he had significant interactions with the Nuntius, the Dean of the Vatican Diplomatic Corps, Cardinal Achille Ratti, who later became Pope Pius XI. I wonder what the future Pope made of this one-armed, one-eyed psychopath who swore constantly. From all these affairs, Carton De Wiart developed a sympathy for the Poles and supported their claims to Eastern Galatia. This caused disagreement with his Prime Minister, David Lloyd George, at the next meeting, but was appreciated by the Poles themselves. At one time during his Warsaw stay, he was second in a duel between Polish members of the Myślowski Club, the other second being Baron Karl Gustav Emil Mannerheim, later commander-in-chief of the Finnish armies in World War II and president of Finland, which, he was a second
president.
Oh, yeah.
I'm terrible at knowing the governments of everybody else.
I feel like, I could be wrong, maybe Mannerheim, did he fight the Germans or did he collaborate? Maybe I'm thinking of a different country. Anyway, Norman Davis, a reporter at the time, found out that Carton De Wiart was compromised by spies when he was caught up in a gun-running operation from Budapest using stolen wagon lids. He was smuggling guns for the Poles so that they could fight these 4 wars. This is just like, I'll go and get you some guns, and just basically stole them from Hungary over the border. After a slightly inconvenient aircraft crash led to him being briefly imprisoned in Lithuania, he went back to England to report, this time to the new Secretary of State for War, Winston Churchill, who was much more sympathetic to the plight of the Poles and probably really intimidated by this unkillable giant standing in front of him, because Churchill was a small man, not around the belly, but he's like,
I was going to say, he's short, not small.
He's quite circular at this point, and it only gets rounder as it goes on. But he liked adventure and violence. Churchill, like, he fucking loved violence, so he was all in for this like crazy looking guy who was like, can we send stuff to the Poles? And he was like, yeah. So Churchill sent a bunch of weapons, food, ammunition, and several vehicles to Poland on the recommendation of this guy. And he was active in August 1920 when the Red Army, the Russian Bolshevik army was at the gates of Warsaw. While out on his observation train, he was attacked by a group of 6 red cavalrymen and fought them off with his revolver from the footplate of his train, so at the back part of the train. He fought them off with his revolver, and at one point he fell off the train, bounced off the ground, picked himself up, continued shooting and charging towards the red cavalrymen, and forced them to retreat, and then he calmly reboarded the train. Because he's a fucking G, isn't he?
Yeah, I just watched that like a cartoon, though. Like, fucking he just fell off, bounced. Yeah. He's shooting. Although he's only got one hand. So
he's only got one hand. I mean, at that point, right, there's 6 of them, the red cavalry, and probably only about 3 of them have got guns. So, like, they're like, this guy is enormous. He's missing a bunch of limbs. He's fallen over. He's still firing. I don't want any part of this. Let's get the fuck out of here. It's only a train.
How many people died laughing at the sight of this big motherfucker with one arm and one eye falling off a train, shooting at him?
Half of them are like, listen, I have to live because I have to tell someone about this. This is too funny to not tell someone else about. So anyway, his efforts were successful, and the weapons he helped bring through from Budapest helped, and the Poles won the war. The British military mission was wound up. Carton De Wiart was promoted to temporary brigadier general and also appointed to the local rank of major general on the 1st of January. Carton De Wiart officially retired from the army on the 19th of December with the honorary rank of major general after 20 years of service. His last Polish aide-de-camp was Prince Karol Mittelaj Władysław, or something like that, a member of the Władysław family who inherited a large 500,000-acre, 200-hectare estate in eastern Poland when the communists killed his uncle. So, yeah, he took over this enormous plot of land. They became friends with Carton De Wiart, and he was given the use of a large estate called Prostine in the Pripyat marshes, a wetland area larger than the country of Ireland.
Okay.
Yeah. Big, like basically the size of like Virginia, was his, given to him, and it was surrounded by water and forests. In this location, De Wiart spent the rest of the interwar years. In his memoirs, he said, in the 15 years in the marches, I did not waste one day without hunting. So he's Arnold Schwarzenegger in Predator. He's just like, just like covering himself in mud. The hunt is on. Just, I'm going to stick some pigs and just fucking running around this enormous country-sized load of marshlands, killing anything he can get his hands on, because I mean, he's not going to take up stamp collecting, is he? You know, like, this guy's crazy.
It's true. You sure? Yeah, he was more like the Predator in Predator. Actually, he come in from out of town, big giant ugly motherfucker.
Yeah, he is. He's killing the fucking Predator. Basically unkillable. Doesn't mind like blowing himself up to take everyone out. It's kind of, he is the perfect Predator in this scenario. God help the natural wildlife of Poland.
I wonder if he was like clicking and stuff as he was doing it.
Anytime. Over here. At the break.
Did you imagine the Predator with a posh English accent?
Over here. I lost my hand. Pull off my fingers. At the outbreak of you're never going to get over that, are you? Sorry. At the outbreak of World War II and during the Nazi invasion of Poland, Carton De Wiart met with the Polish commander-in-chief in late August 1939 and formed an incredibly low opinion of his capabilities, so much so that he called him a fucking idiot to his face more than once. You're a fucking idiot. After much arguing, his advice of moving all of the seagoing units of the Polish naval fleet out of the Baltic Sea before the German Navy got there was finally adopted. And they all got out, which thank God they did, because the fleet survived the invasion, which was quick. Like, Poland was destroyed immediately. And the Polish fleet made a significant contribution to the Allied cause, especially the several modern destroyers and submarines that managed to get out. So basically, they kept the German Navy in the Baltic Sea occupied. So that meant that they couldn't surround the entirety of the United Kingdom. So some stuff would get through. And that wouldn't have been possible if this guy hadn't said, get your fucking fleet out of the Baltic Sea before they're captured by the Germans, and they will get captured. And he was right. So, smart dude. He may have helped save a bunch of lives in the Second World War, civilians as well, because there's food parcels getting through.
Not bad at war.
He's really, really good at it. Like, crazy that he's not higher up in the military at this point, but I guess it's because, like, they need this guy on the front line because he's fucking terrifying. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I don't know.
Yeah. It's it's hard to underestimate the kind of the intimidation factor of a giant man with one eye and one arm screaming and charging towards people.
That is a terrifying image and thought picture to have of but he had a view on war that was like total war. You just do it and you win and you kill things and you're done. And then when you go, well, he got shot and went home, but he wanted to war all the way through.
He did.
He thought he didn't have to duck to win.
Yeah, it was just
that was his flaw.
Yeah. He was just, I will charge anything. I will do anything. I will scream. I have absolutely no fear or any sense of self-preservation. And I will charge headlong towards anything. And if I die, I die. And it's like, to the British army, he's like the perfect soldier because he's unkillable and he does whatever the fuck they tell him to, usually while swearing and screaming at the enemy. So it's kind of the perfect soldier, only with less limbs.
Yeah, almost smart.
Almost smart, almost. Not quite, though. Nowhere near. As Polish resistance weakened, Carton De Wiart evacuated the British mission from Warsaw along with the Polish government, with both the Germans and the Soviets in pursuit. His car convoy was attacked by the Luftwaffe on the road, and the wife of one of his aides was killed in the attack, and he was in danger of arrest in Romania, only getting out by aircraft on the 21st of September with a false passport. 3 days later, the Prime Minister of Romania was assassinated by fascists. So he got out just in time. But not enough for him, of course. He's back in England. He was recalled to a special appointment in the army in the autumn of 1939 at the tender age of 59 years old. They're putting this essentially, in the army terms, old man on the front line again. Carton De Wiart reverted to his former rank of colonel and was granted the rank of acting major general on the 28th of November. So he was very quickly promoted back up again. But
why do you have to go back down?
I guess to get him on the front line, because they can't have like a major general on the front line, so they demoted him and then promoted him once he got to the front line, I guess. I don't know how it works. Anyway, after a brief stint in command of the 61st Division in the English Midlands, Carton De Wiart was summoned in April 1940 to take charge of a hastily drawn together Anglo-French force to occupy Namsos, a small town in the middle of Norway, right in the middle of Norway, where they were trying to evacuate, the government and the king and all of this stuff. His orders were to take the city of Trondheim, 125 miles to the south, in conjunction with a naval attack, and advance from the south by troops landed in Andalandsnes, I think it's pronounced. Anyway, he flew to Namsos to recognate the area with his troops. When his short Sutherland flying boat landed, it was immediately attacked by German fighters, and his aide was wounded and had to be evacuated. After the French Alpine troops landed with basically no supplies, because of course they didn't have any supplies, the Luftwaffe bombed and destroyed the town they were staying in, blowing him up again. Despite the fact that he'd been blown up and had no equipment at all, Carton De Wiart managed to move his troops over the fucking Norwegian mountains and down to Trondheimsfjord, so the fjord where they're supposed to be going, where they were shelled by German destroyers. So, all right, lads, we're over the mountain. We're safe now. Oh, shit, there's a destroyer over there. We're in real fucking trouble now. They had no artillery. to challenge the German ships, and it soon became apparent that the whole Norwegian campaign was fast becoming a failure. The naval attack on Trondheim, the reason for Namsos landing, didn't even happen, and his troops were exposed without guns, transport, air cover, or even fucking skis in a foot of snow. That's not good.
Just sinking into the snow then, huh?
Basically, yeah. I mean, they could build like a little igloo, just hide out in there. They were being attacked by German ski troopers, machine gunned and bombed from the air, and the German Navy was landing troops to their rear. So they were basically surrounded.
Shit.
He recommended withdrawal, but was asked to hold his position for political reasons. And he was like, all right, okay, fight to the death, I suppose, because he fucking likes fights more than Russell Crowe in the early 2000s. After orders and counter orders from London, the decision was finally made to evacuate. However, on the date set to evacuate the troops, the ships didn't even fucking show up. The next night, a naval force finally arrived, led through the fog by Lord Louis Mountbatten, who is the king, the queen, or the queen's uncle, I think, Louis Mountbatten at this point. So he's a member of the British royal family. He's like, fuck it, I'll go in and get him out. So he took all of his mates and get your ships, guys, come on, we're getting this guy out. The transport successfully evacuated the entire force amid heavy bombardment by the Germans, resulting in the sinking of 2 destroyers, the French Bison and the British HMS Alfredi. Carton De Wiart arrived back at the British naval base of Skara Flow in the Orkney Islands on the 5th of May 1940, his 60th birthday. They're like, welcome home, happy birthday, do you want to go back?
Wow.
Wow, yeah. Advanced to temporary Major General on 28th of November 1940, he remained inactive very briefly and was appointed as the head of the British Yugoslavian military mission on the 5th of April 1941. Hitler was preparing to invade the country, and the Yugoslavs asked the Brits for help. Carton De Wiart travelled in a Vickers Wellington bomber to Belgrade, Serbia, to negotiate with the Yugoslavian government. After refueling in Malta, the aircraft left for Cairo when within enemy territory to the north and south. Both engines failed off the coast of Italian-controlled Libya, and the plane crash-landed in the ocean about 1.5 miles from land in shark-infested waters.
Oh, shit.
Amazing. Carton De Wiart was knocked unconscious, but the cold water quickly woke him back up again, which, you know, it's going to have that effect. When the plane broke up and sank, he and the rest aboard were forced to swim to shore. They were immediately captured by Italian forces, and he became a high-profile prisoner of war. So this one-armed dude was knocked unconscious on a plane crash and swam to shore while his head was bleeding, and there were sharks everywhere.
And he's 60.
And he's 60. And he's been shot a bunch of fucking times. So,
I'm
you know,
worthless.
Doesn't make you feel great about yourself, does it? You know, I complain when I have a really intense poo. Carton De Wiart, after 4 months at the Villa Orsini in Sulmona, he was transferred to a special prison for senior officers at Castello de Vinciliata. Vincigliata. There we go. Vincigliata. There was a number of senior officers kind of placed here due to the successes achieved by Rommel in North Africa during 1941. Basically captured a bunch of senior British army figures, and they'd all ended up here. He wasn't exactly a model prisoner, making 5 attempts to escape, including one which focused entirely on him spending 7 months tunneling with his one good hand and a spoon. At the
fuck out of here. He did not.
He did. This is all true. What? One spoon, just fucking Shawshanking his way out of this fucking Italian prison or war camp.
Oh wow.
Holy shit. But it gets bad. It gets worse because he got out. He escaped. Yeah, more than once. Carton De Wiart once evaded capture after escaping for 8 days, disguised as an Italian peasant. He was in this fucking 6'3" black-haired dude. He was in northern Italy, could not speak Italian, was 62 years old, and had an eye patch and an empty sleeve, multiple injuries and scars. You look suspiciously like that unkillable soldier we've been chasing. Bad Bappa da Boopy? That checks out. You're definitely Italian. Oh, basta, mamma mia. Oh, he's fine. Oh, man, are you sure you're not a plumber? Oh, my God, that's incredible.
Shit.
Yeah. Like, what the fuck? How could you miss this dude? Anyway, in a surprising development, Carton De Wiart was taken from prison in August 1943 and driven to Rome, of all places. The Italian government was fucking on its knees at this point and was secretly planning to leave the war and wanted Carton De Wiart to send the message to the British Army about a peace treaty with the UK. Carton De Wiart was accompanied by an Italian negotiator, General Giacomo Vannucci, to Lisbon in Portugal to meet Allied contacts to negotiate the surrender. To keep the mission secret, Carton De Wiart was told he needed to wear civilian clothes. Let's keep this one-eyed, one-handed guy, like, let's make him, like, make sure no one recognizes him.
Blend him in.
Blend him in. Distrusting Italian tailors, though, he stated that he had no objection provided he didn't resemble a gigolo. So he's like, don't make me look like a dirty tramp, all right?
Don't worry about it, bud.
Bloody Italians, give me a straightforward suit. In his autobiography, Happy Odyssey, he described the resultant suit as being as good as anything that ever came out of Savile Row. When they reached Lisbon, Carton De Wiart was released and made his way to England, reaching there on the 28th of August, 1943. Within a month of his arrival in England, Carton De Wiart was summoned to spend a night at the Prime Minister's country home at Chequers. Churchill informed him that he was to be sent to China as his personal representative. Probably not a great idea, this one, Winston. He's also kind of racist. Because he's British, he's old, and it's the Second World War, so of course he's racist. He was granted the rank of acting lieutenant general on the 9th of October and left by air for India on the 18th of October 1943, less than 2 months after being released from a prisoner of war camp where he'd tried to escape with a spoon and impersonated an Italian peasant for 8 days. Those must have been 8 good days. He must have really enjoyed himself. Oh, meatballs, spaghetti again? Yes, please. Thank you.
Yeah, he's just living on the street, hiding out, and then snatched up and off to China you go in this gigolo suit. Not a gigolo suit.
No, we promise we won't make you look like a gigolo. We swear. Before arriving in China, Carton De Wiart attended the 1943 Cairo conference organized by Churchill and FDR, and FDR wasn't keen on this guy because I guess because he swore constantly. He arrived in the headquarters of the nationalist Chinese government in Chongqing in early December 1943. For the next 3 years, he was to be involved in a host of reporting, diplomatic, and administrative duties in the remote wartime capital. He met Mao Zedong at a dinner and had a memorable exchange with him, interrupting his propaganda speeches to criticize him for holding back from fighting the Japanese for domestic political reasons. Mao was briefly stunned and then laughed at him before De Wiart started shouting obscenities at him. Okay. You fucking communist motherfucker! Just like going off on this, like on General Mao, Chairman Mao. Sorry, yeah. After the Japanese surrender in August 1945, Carton De Wiart flew to Singapore to participate in the formal surrender. After a visit to Peking, he moved to Nanking, the now liberated nationalist capital, accompanied by Julian Amery, the British Prime Minister's personal representative, to Generalissimo Chiang Kai-shek, who was the predecessor to Mao before Mao swept everyone out of the country. And Chiang Kai-shek basically kind of founded the country of Taiwan, which China has been claiming sovereignty of ever since, because the Chinese government retreated there, and that's where they ended up. And it's a mess.
Now
not touching
weird.
it. It's really fucking weird, and everyone wants their microchips. A visit to Tokyo to meet General Douglas MacArthur came at the end of his tenure. He was now 66 years old and amazingly ready to stop killing people. Despite the offer of a job by Chiang Kai-shek, Carton De Wiart retired in October 1947 with the honorary rank of Lieutenant General after 47 years in the Army. En route home via French Indochina, Carton De Wiart stopped in Rangoon as a guest of the army commander there. Coming downstairs in the morning, he slipped on coconut matting, fell, broke several vertebrae, and again knocked himself unconscious. He was admitted to Rangoon Hospital, where he was treated and released after making a swift recovery in just a couple of months.
Okay.
This fucking 66-year-old dude who broke his vertebrae. He's like, I'm fine. I've still got one eye. Come on.
Dude, he does everything hardcore. Usually old people fall down, they break a hip. He broke all his vertebrae.
He broke his entire spine. He's like, I'm fine. Just give me a couple of months. I'm fucking sick of hospitals at this point. His wife died in 1949. However, in 1951, at the age of 71, he married Ruth Myrtle Muriel Joan McKechnie, a divorcee known as Joan Sutherland, 23 years his junior. They settled at Aggingnach House in Killinadesh, County Cork, Ireland, because his mother was Irish, so he was kind of an Irish hero, even though he fought for the British. Carton De Wiart died at the age of 83 on the 5th of June, 1963, after losing a fight with Thanos, but not vanilla Thanos. I'm talking Infinity Gauntlet Thanos, and even then it was a close fight. So, yeah, 83 years old. He died peacefully in his sleep.
I thought you were going to say a cold or some shit.
Yeah, like being chopped up by a fucking combine harvester that he was having an argument with or something. Yeah, so this dude fought in 3 major world conflicts from the age of 19 to 65 years old. And lost a hand, bunch of fingers. He lost an eye. He got shot in the hip a bunch of times. He had the back of his head blown off. He got shot in the stomach, chest, ear, groin, right the way through. A bunch of concussions. He was in a plane crash. He killed dozens of people single-handedly with his fucking crazy-ass walking stick. And somehow he just kept on going. And that's the story of Adrian Carton De Wiart, the unkillable soldier. Man.
Yeah. Wow, man.
No stretch calling him unkillable.
Not at all. Not even a little bit. Like, he's very unkillable. Completely unkillable. Like, I'm surprised that he just isn't still around.
I mean, yeah. Interestingly, his wife only died in 2006. She was 102 years old. So yeah,
that's his second wife, though.
Second wife, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Who was 21 years his junior, so she was like 49. He was 71 when they got married. Like at that point, he's like 71. She's pushing 50. It's like it's no longer weird. All right, it's no longer that weird. Okay.
It's like, well, I mean, Belichick. I don't know if you're following any of that.
Yeah, exactly. We're not going to go in on Bill Belichick. I mean, like, fucking hell. If he looked like he was happy.
They're in love.
They're in love. Well, he's in love. She has eyes full of green, and she's just going to stick around. What's that Ricky Gervais line about the owner of Playboy getting married at the age of 93? And his advice to the new bride was just don't look at it. And he's like he's on the stage mimicking her, going like that. So yeah, he was kind of an amazing guy, kind of the ideal soldier as well. I'd imagine for any any army would love to have a guy like this. He's just super committed to killing, really.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like he would have been better at it if he hadn't thought like that fatalism, like you don't have to duck because whatever's going to happen is going to happen regardless. Like, I mean, come on, man.
You
dodge.
Yeah. Also, the trenches weren't in the First World War, which is primarily where he got all these injuries. The trenches were not tall. You know, a lot of these guys had to duck down. This is why they ended up getting trench foot, because you're like ducking down the whole time. Your feet are deep in mud. He's 6'3", so his head's like always bobbing above the fucking line of the trenches.
Yeah, just a little more strategy. He had good strategy one time for Poland. Good job.
Yeah, smart in that occasion. Yeah,
and then
that's
the rest
experience, I guess, at that point.
Brute force the rest of the time. So
the rest of the time, he's Custer and Stonewall Jackson. He's just fucking charging headlong into anything he can with a fucking stick. Like,
he's got pieces of watch in him. He's got pieces of clothes in him.
Oh my God, that's so fucked up. And he's like, "Oh, for God's sake, just chop it off. Just take it off. I'll chop it off." Jesus.
He's taking his own parts off.
He's like the original Army Man with the detachable wrists and shit like that, like the things that you could replace. Holy shit. I think I heard about this guy originally about 10 years ago. I never heard this much detail, and it was part of the frustrating thing is just how much information there is out there, but like getting it in one source is really difficult. But I almost couldn't believe all of it was true. But this is all like documented by other people and by other sources, like the doctor saying, yeah, he chopped his fucking hand off. Yeah, he pulled his fucking fingers off. And like all of these different sources coming together, and you're like, okay, so it's all true. This guy was this crazy. Okay, then. So I will point out one thing that I definitely didn't like. I mean, he was a bit racist. I left out the racist stuff. But because he admired the Chinese people. He was like, they care about the community and they work so hard, but they do it with like a real pride and they're happy to do it and stuff. And he really liked that. But he also like said a bunch of horrible traditional racist stuff about the Chinese people. And I'm like, I'm not going to repeat any of that. But also like his lack of empathy. And it's interesting that he met MacArthur towards the end of his life. He had no empathy at all for people who were clearly suffering from shell shock. You know, these people who have been shot 3, 4, 5 times, been wounded, they didn't want to die, and they were clearly traumatized. And his response, which was the response at the time, was just get the fuck on with it. You know, so that's the big thing for me, is that he doesn't seem to have any empathy at all.
He not only did he not have empathy, he didn't seem to have any feelings, physically or emotionally.
No, he didn't seem to feel pain or fear, which kind of prerequisites when you're in a war, really. Those inform your decision making in a good way a lot of the time.
Yeah, sometimes, yeah.
Exactly.
Like might have walked away with an eye and an arm. And back of his head.
Active depth perception, you know. Maybe a fully constructed head. You know, maybe he wouldn't have had the back of his head blown off if he'd been a bit more.
God, that would hurt, man. Could you think of the headaches you'd get from that?
Oh my God, I can't even. How would they repair that? And he went back to water, and he was in shark infested waters after having the back of his head blown off. How is
swimming with one arm from a plane? This is bullshit.
After being knocked out.
Sorry.
Come on, this dude is fucking crazy, and it's all
I can't
true.
even score it because I can't give him a high score because he's too cool.
He is, not only is he cool, but he's actually really good at what he did. You know, he's not a failure by any stretch of the imagination. He starts out as a young, like, entry-level private, and then he's like lieutenant general by the time he like retires 47 years later. So he was very good at what he did. It's just the way he did it was fucking insane.
Right. Well, and I mean, it's all terrible war and killing and death and stuff, and terrible decisions to not duck or use strategy at all in war.
No strategy. I'll just charge the fence. No, you fucking insane. You'll die. Like, okay, sure.
So, like, yeah, that.
Yeah.
But when I say cool, I mean, come on. These stories they're absolutely ridiculously so far-fetched it doesn't seem real. He tunneled out of war prison with a spoon with one arm and a plane crash. And that's just amazing. What an amazing story.
I know we don't like to use like stereotypical words because usually those are like influenced by a bunch of really shitty history, but like the term badass, it doesn't really get much more fucking badass than this guy. Also, like, he is the most stereotypical English person in history. He's like super kind of like grumpy and miserable and like just rich, just always rich from the start, and like I'm going to do what I want, but like he's just fucking insane as well. And like, how have we not had a film about this dude or a series? You know, because you could spread that over a 12-episode run.
There's two different versions of that I want as a series or a movie, and one has to be like the Mr. Bean sort of version where there's just this tall, goofy dude that just runs into the war and falls off a train shooting at people.
Keeps getting bits blown off him.
Yeah, it just parts coming off as he goes. Yeah, and then the real story, which would be as hilarious if you're just demented like me.
Yeah, I don't see how you could make his story and make it like The Thin Red Line or Saving Private Ryan, where it's like super earnest and like really dramatic and sad and impossibly morbid and really deep, and oh my god, the horrors of war, because he just wasn't that guy. There has to be an element of really dark humor if you make this film, and I don't know how marketable that is right now. Maybe it might be. I mean, Deadpool did well, and that's effectively a kind of a mini war film, the most recent one.
Let's cast Sam Elliott.
Oh shit, yeah, as the older one.
Can he do
any accent other than Sam Elliott?
Yeah. Shit.
I'm from California. No, I think what you get, like, because he's tall as well. You know, the weird thing is that if this had been made 40, 50 years ago, this film, Christopher Lee was fucking born to play this dude. You know, Saruman, like he was, because he's fucking enormous, and he even looks like this dude as well. Also, you put an eye patch on Christopher Lee, which he did in the Three Musketeers films. He looks fucking terrifying. So, I mean, there are a bunch of British actors you could get to play him. I guess you could get like Ray Fiennes or someone like that. Or
trying to get the picture of Christopher Lee that would have been perfect, but now I can't find it.
Is it the man with the golden gun sort of look? Because he looks a lot like that dude. But yeah, there's a bunch of British. I mean, we've got Britain is not short of weird looking actors. We could get a bunch of people to play him at various points in his life. But I would genuinely love to see a film or a short series, maybe like a 12-episode run done about this guy's life. Maybe you could do like 3 episodes split over 4 seasons or something like that. Maybe you can do it like at the various stages of his life, like cover the Boer War, then the First World War, then the Second World War, and you know, maybe the fourth one is retiring and falling down the stairs. I don't know, but
here we go. Studios hire us. What's wrong with you?
Come on, like we're coming up with all these great ideas, and we're only going to charge you like $100,000 a year. Come on. So that's Adrian Carton De Wiart. If you had to give him a score, though, what do you think you'd go with?
Oh, just because he never ducked.
Yeah.
And I feel like he would have been just as good at war had he dodged a couple of times.
Yeah.
Just a
dip, duck. Dive and dodge.
I'm gonna go with the 75.
75, I like that. Yeah, it makes sense because it would have probably been higher had he not been as good. Like, who was that? The U.S. general who was like, "Come on, lads, they're not gonna shoot us. We're not close enough." And then, boom, he got his fucking head blown off. During the Civil War, we covered him.
Yes. Oh man.
And he's the bad version of this guy. Like, he had bad tactics and he had a death wish and he died almost instantly. Whereas Carton De Wiart is basically him, only with +9 luck or whatever you want to call it, you know?
Yeah.
He rolls a nat 20 every single fucking time, this guy. So he definitely a 75 is fine because he had no tactics. He was just, I want to fight, I want to die in the glorious battle that is war. And like, that never abated. He was basically that person from the time he was born until the time he died. Never changed who he was. And even in his downtime, the 15 years he spent between the war in Poland, where he basically was given a country to himself, effectively, he just spent the whole time killing. That's all he wanted to do, was hunt nature. Honestly, the natural world is probably thankful that there were 2 world wars, because if there weren't, this guy would have wiped out hundreds of species by now, hunted them to extinction.
Killing machine.
He's just a fucking killing machine. So that's Adrian Carton De Wiart, the unkillable soldier. I really enjoyed researching this guy because, again, I knew about some of the stuff, and I didn't know about him pulling his own fingers off and chopping his own fucking hand off. I'm like, this dude is fucking crazy in every way that is traditionally crazy that we think about people like that. Not like mentally ill. We're just like, he just does not care. He has no self-preservation at all. So I had a lot of fun researching it.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun listening to it.
It was a rad story, and I hope to bring you more. I know obviously it was about war and there's a lot of death and killing and stuff, but I feel like it's a story that is so far out in the extremes that actually it becomes entertaining despite the horrible nature of the First World War and the Second World War and things like that. Because this guy was so unique, it becomes a really interesting story, and I had a lot of fun researching this one. About 4,500 words, and I could have written another 4,500 on this guy, because there's so many other stories, a lot of them racist, so we won't cover that. But thank you all so much for tuning into this episode. And remember, if you enjoyed this and you would like to support us financially, please go to patreon.com/history's greatest idiots, where you will get a present on joining. You'll get an annual present when you've been with us for a year. You'll get behind the scenes footage of our lives and us going on holiday and seeing wonderful historical things, and also access to scripts from episodes that we've done in the past, exclusive recordings, which we're going to be doing very soon, and just a community of people that have been keeping us going. People like, he opens a different tab, Jesse Christ, Kimberly Johnson, Andrew Zavara, Dilly Bob, Silent Crisis, Carrion, Suzanne, and Toasterzoid. Thank you all so much for supporting us. We are also available on Instagram if you look for @History's Greatest Idiots, where you can find a bunch of amazingly performing memes somehow. And video podcasts are also available on YouTube if you just go to youtube.com/History's Greatest Idiots and look us up on Spotify, because you can see all of the podcasts there in video format as well. So that's our show. We'll be back in a couple of weeks. Derek, would you like to say goodbye?
Goodbye, everybody.
And we'll see you all again very soon. Take care now. Bye.